Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Vegan Proteins Muscles by Brussels Radio. My name is Danny.
And I'm Giacomo.
And this is episode 103. All right, everybody, thanks so much for tuning in. Welcome back. We hope everybody had an awesome Christmas, an awesome New Year. I think we recorded these, the last two, before January 1st. So yeah, hope you guys all had an awesome New Year and that it's off to a great start.
Yeah, regardless of how you celebrate and what you do, it's just something about the end of the year that it's more than reflecting. It's like a scramble to get ready for 2023, whether you're a person who celebrates holidays or not. And hopefully this year is off to a strong start for you. We certainly have a lot going on. Like, Danny, you started a cut, right?
I did, yes. I started my first cut in a really, really long time on January 1st, and I am happy to say that it has been going very, very well so far. If you want more details on exactly how that is laid out, we just posted it on our YouTube channel about a week ago as of the day of recording. So the YouTube channel is Vegan Proteins. The name of it is called, what did I call it? I've heard something really funny in the thumbnail, like getting my shit together or something. But it's, about fresh start and outlining my cut and my goals and how I plan to do it. And actually today I'm filming a what I eat in a day video, which reminds me I need to get a clip of us in this gorgeous closet that we sit in to record. But yeah, I started the cut at 150 pounds on the nose. And we're 9 days into the year, and I think I'm down like about 4 pounds, give or take. Now, that's not 4 pounds of fat. Some of that's just water from starting a cut. But I'm pretty pleased because the whole cut is going to be 10 weeks, and the goal is to lose 15 pounds of body fat. And it's mainly like just to clean things up in this building phase. Not like I'm getting ready for a show or anything like that, because I am certainly not doing that at the moment.
But when you say lose 15 pounds of body fat, how many pounds do you think are going to come off by the time you twist and turn?
We will see.
Yeah, true. And I am like 7 weeks post competition season, and I took the recovery process pretty seriously, meaning I ate up a lot. I did not want to feel that bad anymore. And quite frankly, I did not want to have that kind of control or focus on food at all. And I'm actually cleaning up just a little bit. I wouldn't say I'm in a deep caloric deficit, but I'm rebalancing a little bit, maybe a touch hungry. And hey, I get to piggyback off your efforts. So we sort of do this thing together, but not like we used to do when we were prepping.
Yeah. No, this isn't that. I don't think that's what you're doing at all. I think you're probably just hungry because you've been eating like a bear for the last 7 weeks, and now you're not eating quite as much as that, but still like a totally normal, reasonable amount for a person your size to eat. But your body's like, what? Where's all the food? That's all.
Anyways.
Yeah.
So, what are we talking about today, Danny?
Well, we are talking about this idea that I think is very romantic to a lot of people, which is pulling a 180. Basically on your life. And I feel like it's really super common at the beginning of the year that people set these goals that basically look absolutely nothing like their life right now. And they're going to start it all at once, and they're going to accomplish it all at once. And in 6 months, you're not even going to recognize this person anymore. And I think people are really, really obsessed with this idea of doing things like this, and it pretty much always fails. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about, why do we love it in the first place? Why are we also drawn to this idea? Why does it fail? And what can we do differently?
Well, how do we get started? My opinion is that we lead this conversation with the motivating aspect of a 180. Everyone likes to see fast change. Everyone wants that reward, that sense of reward, I should say. And they want to see their body change fast. And it's also like, look, if you don't get the results, if you don't get that buy-in when you start doing something, probably don't even want to do it. Like I know me, if I was listening and I heard us talk about this, I'd be like, man, Giacomo and Danny, they don't even want us to do this thing. Like, they're just talking around in circles about why should we or should we not do this thing. And that's not what we're trying to say. It's the fact that fast results can happen, but it's not about getting from crossing the start line and getting to the finish line as fast as possible because, well, I mean, I know this is kind of duh, but you wind up putting yourself into a sort of yo-yo phase, and that's not good either.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think people just do this with their fitness, although certainly that's probably what we see the most of is fitness completely overhauling the way that they eat 100%. A really good example, especially in Veganuary, I think, is that we kind of talked about this on the Veganuary podcast. People that are like totally meat and potatoes, have been their whole life, but now they decide they want to go raw vegan, no oil, no processed food at all. And I cannot think of one person, not even one person, who has done that successfully on the first go. Not
Raw
one.
food?
From eating like McDonald's to going to like a straight up raw food, no oil diet on the first shot and sticking with it, I can't think of one.
Well, when I define success, I think of that person's mental health and their ability to carry through and like where they're at after the fact. I hear what you're saying in terms of creating examples. I think there are outliers, but when you turn around and you see someone a year later that has done that, they're either rebounded or they don't know how to continue doing it, or like even worse, they wind up going in the wrong direction after the fact because they did not take the time to do it the right way. And those are the rare exceptions to the rules. Excuse me.
You just totally lost me. I have no idea what you're saying.
I'm saying that there are people that in fact can do that, but they are the rare exceptions to the rule. And if you are that kind of person that is able,
But you're saying that in a year they can't do it anymore. Is that what you're saying?
more or less,
Then they can't do it. If you can't do it in a year, you didn't do it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, anybody can white knuckle their way through something for a certain period of time, but if you can't sustain those results, like, you didn't do it. So, I mean, I've certainly met people who have successfully done all sorts of things, but usually it's either they did it slowly or it was after a lot of trial and error. Like, nobody, I shouldn't say nobody, but almost nobody just wakes up and becomes a new person. And I think that's the thing that we're drawn to the most is, and it's actually really sad if you think about it, how many people imagine this life where they are someone completely different. And that's what they yearn for, to be somebody else entirely. Like, just stop for a minute and think about how kind of sad that is. I think this draw to a 180 comes from some kind of like self-loathing, or at the very least, like just not liking who you are right now. And that is a bit of a bummer.
yeah, for sure. And I think when you don't focus on the 180 and you focus on changing from the inside out, while in theory the results may come a little slower, they're going to stick and you'll feel good about the process all the way through. And you'll learn about what you're actually doing as opposed to being that kind of person that follows something just because, right? If you're the type of person that just wants results and you're like, I'll put in the work, I'll do whatever, just give me the thing, right? Not only are you not learning, what are you left with after the fact if you're lucky enough to get to the finish line and get your 180? And that's what we worry about when we see people that are like, just give me the formula, just give me the program. Like, it's not that simple. There's a whole process that's involved in changing your habits, changing your routine, thinking about how you eat, reflecting on how you feel about your body composition and what you want to do to change it. It's not as simple as I want to lose 50 pounds in 50 days and this is exciting. And then I'm going to take a break for like 3 months and I'm going to keep going. You know, it's those scenarios are so incredibly rare, so incredibly rare. And if you're lucky enough to have a scenario like that, you're still going to have to be doing some work after the fact to figure out how to balance yourself out so that you don't just become lost as far as like, this doesn't feel right. Like, what am I doing here? You know, do you wind up developing a different kind of disordered eating habit or way of being, et cetera, et cetera. Like there's all kinds of pitfalls to thinking about things in terms of a 180.
Have you guys heard of the vegan cruise? If not, we want to tell you about it because we are so excited to be presenters on the 2023 cruise, and we would love to see you guys there. So the vegan cruise is exactly what it sounds like and so much more. It's a cruise from March 17th to March 24th that leaves from Miami and will be visiting Belize, Honduras, Costa Maya, and the Bahamas on the beautiful MSC Divinia. It is so cool to wake up in a new country every day of the trip, seriously. But as if that wasn't enough, one of the biggest drawbacks of most cruises is that there's nothing vegan to eat. I had a client actually go on a cruise recently, and she said she was shocked at how little she could eat, and for that price, it just was not worth it for her. But that's not a problem on this cruise because all 3 meals are fully catered, vegan, and made by gourmet chefs. You will never be hungry. There are also get-togethers like ice cream socials and pizza parties out by the pool. Very fun. And to top all of that off, the cruise is absolutely loaded with some of the biggest leaders in the vegan movement, giving lectures, presentations, and classes. Folks like Dr. Greger, Dr. Barnard, Dr. Clapper, Robert Cheek, Juliana Hever, and so many more, and of course, us. We will be hosting exercise classes and giving presentations on plant-based fitness. And of course, we would very much love to spend time with any of our listeners who come out. So if you're interested, click the link in the show notes to book your spot because it always sells out. And mention vegan proteins when you book and you'll get a $50 onboarding credit at the vegan bookstore. We look forward to vacationing with you guys.
So I guess where I would be curious to hear your thoughts on this, Danny, is we're given some simple examples of what a 180 looks like, right? It's like, okay, I just want this result and I want it fast. What other ways do you see your clients looking for a 180 outside of I want to lose X amount of weight or I want my body to look like this?
Well, forget about just my clients. I see people in day-to-day life want all sorts of to just be different. People will completely overhaul their wardrobe. People will decide that they want to be the type of person that meditates and journals every day, or the type of person who goes out to social events on a regular occasion, or they're going to be the best person at the office from now on. People really are just drawn to makeovers, life makeovers. And we are all drawn to it. Look at the movies that we watch. How many movies have you seen with the makeover montage? Everybody knows what I'm talking about right now. Somebody is kind of like a goofball or they're kind of dorky or whatever. And then some heroes come in and they change their hair and they change their clothes and they take them to the salon and they teach them how to talk and act cool and blah, blah, blah. And voila, they're a new person and all these great things start happening for them. But, we love that. As a culture, we're obsessed with this idea of a makeover. So it should come as no surprise that people want some version of these for themselves. And, on one hand, I think it's great. People want to improve. And I'm a huge fan of people who want to make improvements in their life. I just think that there are problems when you try to make all of the improvements all at once, right now, for the result immediately. You're going to be disappointed.
That's a very interesting perspective, and I guess a lot of that I had not considered. Oh, so obviously you can focus on making smaller changes that, here's the thing, you can still be rewarded instantly. You can still have instant gratification for what you're doing. I just think it's a matter of perhaps tempering expectations and thinking about the things that you do want to change right away and how long it will take for those changes to really take effect, for example. I could meditate for 30 days. I'll be rewarded. I'll feel a little more calm. I'll have a better mindset. I'll have more awareness. But I shouldn't expect 180 in 30 days. As a matter of fact, if anything, it opens up the door to more work that I have to do and more growth that I was unaware of, right? And I think that's where the real win is, Danny, is when you realize that the work that you're putting in on yourself for 1 month, you recognize that it is rewarding and you don't fixate on that. And you also accept the fact that it is going to open up a whole new door of possibilities for the work that you'll be hopefully wanting to put in on yourself for the next 6 months to 6 years even. It's that long-term stuff that you can't put a finger on, but you know that it's there once you start looking at making a change and not looking back right away, if that makes any sense.
I think it really all comes down to focusing not just on the result itself. If you just focus on the result that you want, so for our context, let's say that the result is you want to get a little bit leaner, right? If you just focus on the result rather than the thing required to get that result, you're going to be like daily frustrated. If you focus on the things to get that result, things like maybe walking more often or eating more vegetables and less, packaged snacks, then that's going to be a little bit more rewarding because every time you do those things, you're achieving that little habit, right? Of having more vegetables at dinner. Then eventually the result will come. But if all you're doing is focusing on the result, you're kind of miserable in the meantime because you're almost like annoyed by the things that you have to do to achieve the result rather than just trying to enjoy those things as you're doing them. Because if you can do that, if you can actually learn how to enjoy lifting regularly, the midday walks, eating more protein, eating more vegetables, drinking more water, getting better sleep, if you can actually learn to enjoy all of those things, not only do you get to reach that goal, but then you get to keep that goal, which I think is the part that people forget when they're setting their goals. And I know for a fact that was me. When I very first started getting into fitness, and this was after I had sort of lost a decent amount of weight simply by going vegan, when I decided I wanted to do better, I wanted to get in really good shape. I did. I got in really good shape, and then I remember saying okay, now what? Do I just do this forever till I die? And I remember the horror that I felt of realizing, oh, well, yes, actually, that is the answer. If I want to maintain this, then I gotta do this forever till I die. Now, I was really successful in reaching that goal initially, but there were a lot of things, there was a lot of stuff I was not enjoying about the process. I was also doing a lot of stuff just plain ass wrong. But because I was focused on the result and not the process, I was just so bummed out when I realized, oh my God, it's this forever. And then I fell off. I totally fell off for quite a while of training, of eating the way that I normally ate, and backslid a lot in my progress. Yeah, we were together when this happened, so you probably remember this period shortly after we moved to Portland. And it was unpleasant, and it wasn't until I refound that enjoyment, or found, I guess, for the first time, enjoying the process, setting it up in a way that was sustainable, that I could enjoy forever. Now, when I reach a goal, I'm not thrilled at the prospect of every single little thing that I have to do all the time, but for the most part, I enjoy it. If I don't do it, I don't feel great, rather than just the result.
Yeah, I could certainly relate to you in a lot of ways as far as me focusing on the outcome and then the worry after the fact. I need this outcome and I need it to continue to happen. And if it doesn't, I can't do this thing. And then before you know it, sabotage sets in, or you have a hard time getting back to it when you're balancing out your priorities. There's a lot of moving parts to make a change. Wouldn't it be nice if you could just compartmentalize things and make stuff happen? Well, the truth is that you can, but that strategy only lasts for so long, and it actually winds up backfiring on you. So it just takes a bit of time to get to know yourself. before you're able to do a true 180. When you mentioned this topic, I felt a little averse to wanting to discuss this because this is literally the first thing that I say to somebody when they hop on a call with me and they're like, "Hey, you think hiring a coach would be a good idea for me?" And I'm like, "Listen, you could do a 180. Our goal is to make sure you do a 180 and you get there and you know what to do for the rest of your life in a sustainable and balanced way." When I say that, Danny, to almost every single person I speak to that says, "Yo, I want a coach," I mean it. But the truth is, it's not something they're going to get working with a coach for 12 weeks. It's something that, yeah, you can get fast-tracked on your way to that working with someone else, but it is a process. It's like minimum 18 months.
Right. And I think like expectations and having realistic expectations is super, super important because don't get it twisted. I guess I should have said why we love an immediate 180. That does not exist. Like the immediate 180 does not exist. And, I can almost hear people saying, well, so-and-so was an overnight success and so-and-so was an overnight success. And show me an overnight success and I'll show you 10 years of failure leading up to it. Like, I do not believe overnight success exists at this point in my life. I've had too many friends and colleagues and even ourselves to some degree, people have been like, wow, you guys just blew up. And it's like, ha, do you have any idea like how much work and failure and rejection and disappointment and tears goes into something before somebody like quote unquote makes it big? Like, no, people don't have any idea because that's the nature of it, is you didn't see all those failures. So when we say like an immediate 180 is not possible, that is not to say that a 180 is not possible. But there's a lot of failure that happens before that, generally speaking. And when you work with a coach, we try to help you avoid those failures. So you're just like on a slow, steady track to long-term success.
Yeah, that's a pretty good way to frame it, Danny. I agree with you on many fronts, honestly, when it comes to avoiding the pitfalls and finding your path to success. I mean, like anyone else, I like to celebrate the wins. I like to focus on the positive. I like to think that anything's possible. I don't like to paint everything in a dark way and reflect on the negative too much. But sometimes it's important to remember that you failed forward many times over and you're going to again, while still also finding some sense of peace in what you've actually accomplished. If you're only focusing on what you're accomplishing and you try to accomplish more, right? It's a means to an end. You have to take a look back and realize like this stuff is hard. It doesn't just come naturally. It doesn't come because you want to put one foot in front of the other and you're a disciplined person and you want to put in the work and you want to change. Like there's a lot that goes into creating lasting change for yourself.
Yeah, I think that the most important thing is to try to change like one or two things at a time and then build those into your routine and get really, really comfortable with them until they like almost become second nature before you try to add another thing into your routine. But a lot of people wake up on January 1st with a list of 15 new things they're going to do that day. And then by literally like the first weekend, they can't do it anymore. They're like, ugh, something's got to give. And my cut that I set up on the 1st that I outlined in that video, there were some changes that had to be made in order for me to succeed at that cut. But they didn't feel like, oh, these are brand new things that I'm learning how to do. It was kind of just like, okay, I got to get back to doing the things that I know work. And it was only a handful of things that were like totally new, like adding in formal cardio several days. That's totally new. And starting to track my food again. And also the food was decreased, obviously. And that was new. Focusing on making sure I drink a certain amount of water, like actually really tracking my water. The tracking it was new, but I was like, oh, this should be easy peasy. And even for myself, a week into the year, I think it was Saturday or maybe it was yesterday, I can't even tell. I was just like, oh God, I still have 4,000 steps I have to get in today. Like, I just don't want to do it. And those were like tiny little changes for me. But I was thinking if I was somebody else, if I hadn't been used to doing these sorts of things more than half of the time for the last decade, I would probably have just given up at that point and just been like, ugh, all right, forget it. Or one of the times the kids tried to give me candy, which I don't know how they got a roll of lifesavers, but my God, did they try to stick so many lifesavers in my mouth this week? And didn't happen, but that's from a lot of years of practice. Trying to do all these things at once for the first time would have been a failure because guess what? The first time someone like tempted me with some delicious food was probably like 15 years ago, and you better believe I caved. And I caved dozens and dozens and dozens of times since then to eventually build up the sort of resolve to not cave now. So again, this looks like, oh, she just started on the first and was immediately successful, but what you can't see is how many times I was not successful at that exact thing for a really long time.
Yeah, I still freak myself out actually with the things that I want to do, and I'm like, okay, this is just going to be routine. I'm going to keep doing it. In other words, so for me, I say this a lot to my clients. I'm like, look, we're going to focus on nutrient-dense foods. We're going to eat whole foods more often than not. And we're going to flexibly toss in other kinds of foods whenever we want. And I nailed it during prep. I mean, I nailed it for like a year and a half straight up. Fresh whole foods, fruits, veggies, grains. Point is that after the fact, I went, we'll say screaming in the opposite direction.
We'll say screaming in the opposite direction. Yeah, we could say that safely, I think, based on my observations.
And then I had to check myself, and I'm like, no one is immune. No one is immune, no matter how long your routine is, to your emotions getting the better of you, or for you like not having the lifestyle that you want to live, no matter how long you've been in a routine, no matter how many times. I mean, this is like my seventh to ninth time prepping, something like that, or something ridiculous. And I typically do get back to eating whole foods more often than not, but you still got to check yourself.
Well, that actually gets me thinking. Who are some of the worst offenders of the trying to do a 180 and falling apart? Bodybuilders, competitive bodybuilders, because they are the quote unquote success story most of the time, right? The ones that make it to the stage, a lot of times they woke up, they decided they wanted to do a bodybuilding competition, and they white knuckled it and held on longer than most people do to make it to that stage, particularly for the first time, right? They had to build all new habits. They had to be training religiously, cardio, very frequently, dieting and being hungry and eating like a certain thing every single day for months to get to that stage. And there is nobody that I know of that rebounds harder than a first-time bodybuilder. There is nobody on earth, because for them, almost all of that was brand new. And then it's over, because none of it was sustainable, which, is a whole separate topic we've had 1,000 times about how competitive bodybuilding is not sustainable. Prep is not sustainable. You can't stay that lean forever. But if you don't know what to do after that, the rebound is stark and really, really scary for a lot of people. And this is why my absolute number one piece of advice for first-time bodybuilders is do not try to do it without a coach. Because this period after that first competition can break you forever.
The first time I competed, it threw me into disordered eating habits for the following, we'll say like somewhere in the vicinity of 5 to 10 years. That's how long it took for me to fully recover. I had no coach. I did not know what I was doing. I was a kid. To this day, I wish that I I wish that I signed up for that contest prep advertisement in the back of the Natural Bodybuilding magazine by someone who is still held in high regard as a really good coach in the evidence-based community. I still kick myself for
You
having...
didn't know. How could you know?
Well, I also didn't
you
have
don't
the-
know what you don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have the money for it. I wanted to do it. And I was a kid. I mean, these days are so much different. There's so much more at your disposal. I mean, if
Yeah.
you're listening to this,
Well, now Dr. Joe Klemczewski has an entire free podcast. You know, crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, man, like bodybuilders are particularly offensive when it comes to the 180 failure, I think. And the newer the bodybuilder, the worse. So especially if they don't have anybody saying like, hey, I know you don't know it yet, but the next 6 weeks or the month after your show is going to be as hard as every month of this prep combined and then some.
Those are the flags. Watch the flags. If your coach is only focusing on getting you to your season and looking your best, if they're not talking about your mental health after the fact, before you even get into a prep with them, if they're not warning you of these things, like just run as fast as you can in the opposite direction. They need to be focused on that with you too.
Yeah. Yeah, but that, you know, that's an example of how doing too much all at once, which is the nature of bodybuilding, right? The nature of body, I would encourage anybody interested in bodybuilding, have some time under your belt of training regularly, tracking your food, sleeping well, drinking well. A lot of people just wake up one day and decide they want to do a bodybuilding competition. It's a terrible idea. But when you have that foundation of training well, eating well, sleeping well, drinking water regularly, etc., under your belt for a solid year or so, it's going to make that transition to prep and back a lot gentler than just deciding to do it because it's on your bucket list.
And this reminds me of something that we've been talking about for the past couple years, is like the discussion between being completely intuitive and being completely methodical and tracking numbers and macros and stuff, and like that in-between place where you don't quite know where you belong and you feel like you shouldn't have to do the tracking and it's not healthy. And then alternatively, you don't want to throw caution to the wind. However, the idea of intuitive eating is nice, or as we call it, informed intuitive eating, right? Because you're an athlete, not just someone who's in touch with your emotions and your hunger signals. Like, there's intention there, and your actions need to meet your intention. What I'm getting at, though, is to not think too long and hard about the skills that you're developing before you get to where you need to be, right? I can't think of a single person who can start off as an informed, intuitive eater, eating like an athlete from day one without ever having tracked anything, without having any knowledge of what a calorie is, what a carbohydrate, what a fat, what a macro is. For example, you can't just, there's no amount of digesting information that's going to get you there until you practice the thing. And you still have to do the basics. You still have to learn through experience, like how to actually track, for example, before you go there.
Yeah. Don't know how this turned into a bodybuilding conversation. It seems to always do that, doesn't it?
Kinda.
Oh, well, it's still really important, and I do think it's a good example of doing a 180.
Hey listeners, we hope you've been enjoying this episode, and we appreciate your love of all things vegan fitness. For those of you who want even more support on your vegan fitness journey, check out our Muscles by Brussels community and become a member. By joining the team, you are one of our exclusive VIPs. As a member, you'll find over 200 macro-friendly, high-protein recipes that can meet any of your meal planning needs. You'll also receive training programs that update monthly. This training has progressive overload built into it, so you can be sure if you're following the program, you are making progress. All of this and more is located inside our Vegan Proteins members only app. As a Muscles by Brussels member, you'll unlock bonus courses, challenges, and more every month. You'll also be invited to our live Zoom video calls, which happen 2 times a month, and are absolute gold to those who show up. And if you can't make the calls, don't worry, you have the opportunity to email us whenever you want. You'll receive a video response to all of your questions from one of the coaches here at Vegan Proteins every time you message us. Members also receive 40% off many of our other services, And of course, our private community of like-minded individuals is like no other. Best of all, you can try this membership out for a full month at no cost to you with this special offer for our listeners only, because we appreciate and want to fully support you. Use the link in our show notes to sign up for your free trial today. We hope to see you on our next live coaching call.
So a couple of takeaways at the end here that I would say can be really important with your goal setting and then going for those goals would be, before you even start making your goals, look, and if you didn't come to my goal setting workshop, where were you? No, I'm just kidding. If you missed it, shoot me an email. I'll send you the replay. Before you even start setting your goals, look back at what you've been doing and figure out what it is that you've been doing that you actually like, that you want to keep going, or what is it about yourself that you like, that you don't want to lose. Like, appreciate some of the things about where you are right now before you start writing your new goals. That would be my first tip. My second tip would be to write SMART goals. So everybody's heard of SMART goals, but I actually like to use SMARTer goals, and that stands for specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, time-bound, exciting, and relevant to where you are in your life right now. So that is so, so, so important that your goals tick all of those boxes. If you just have a vague goal, like, I want to lose weight, I want to eat better, you're not going to hit it. Now, if you say, I want to lose 15 pounds of body fat by June 1st by going to the gym and taking some classes that I like all of that makes it much more likely that you're going to actually hit those goals rather than just a very vague goal. That's key. My last tip is to not discount the small wins. There are tiny little wins that we tend to just overlook, or if they're not good enough, then we just discount them entirely. Like, if someone gets half of their workout in, they don't come to me and say, hey, Danny, I got 50% of my workout in today. Go me. They say, I missed half of my workout on this day and blah, blah, blah. That sucks. And it's like, really, if the alternative was them doing nothing, then getting 50% of the workout in was actually pretty awesome. So, if your goal is to eat 3 different vegetables a day and you only get 2 on a certain day, great job getting 2 and not 0. Like, find the little wins in there and celebrate them. They do not kick you back to 0 at all if you don't just hit them all 100%. So I think that's really key as well.
Well, since we're talking about goals, you can also break down a large goal into smaller ones, or micro goals, if you will. And you don't have to do that up front. I mean, quite frankly, when you create a goal and you write it down, you wind up realizing a month to 3 months later that what you put down on paper isn't exactly the goal that you were looking to accomplish. And you also start to realize the things that you need to do to get there, so you can essentially, it can evolve, and you can also set smaller goals that are attainable based on, like, oh crap, like, in order to get here, I need to do these things. Let me create those goals too. And that's where you can get your instant wins while you're still focusing on making a long-lasting change.
Moving on to our question and answer segment. Giacomo, what are you currently eating for lunch these days? I'm in a rut.
Well, the past couple weeks for me, tamale, broccoli, and some Morningstar Farm chicken strips. And then I throw a little hot sauce over it. And I swap out my tamale for some quinoa, or at least I have this week, instead of, 'cause tamales get boring.
No, they don't. Freaking love those tamales. So the tamales, this is important because I didn't know this. We live in New England. You can't get a good tamale here, period, end of story. In the frozen section of the grocery store, the company Goya, which we have a ton of here, makes some frozen tamales, and most of them are not vegan, but they have one that's just a sweet corn tamale, and it is vegan, and it is very, very good. So
My
You're
gosh,
welcome.
I'm going to show my ignorance here. Why are tamales not vegan? Is it the cheese?
They are usually stuffed with something, and even the vegetarian ones are usually cheese and beans. Sometimes it's like vegetables and meat and cheese.
Gotcha.
Makes me miss Texas.
It's true.
Oh, and now I'm so hungry. I was already kind of hungry, and now I'm like really, really hungry.
I'll make you a tamale later.
I can't have one. It doesn't fit into my macros. Yeah, bummer.
Danny, how do you balance work and life without getting too busy in either arena?
I don't. I fail at this miserably. But I'm working on it. I'm always working on it, trying to balance work and life. Well, because we've worked from home since long before the pandemic and will for the foreseeable future, for me, having a schedule was really, really important, a work schedule. Like I at my desk or between this hour and this hour on these days. And then if it's not those hours, I try really hard to not be at my desk. And it's taken me years to be able to build in weekends off, but here we are, and I'm not giving them up. I won't do it. And I try not to talk about work outside of those hours. I often fail in that regard, especially over the last couple of years. Work has gotten so much busier, which is a great problem to have, which actually led to us hiring our incredible assistant, Christina, who also edits this podcast, and another coach, Athena, who we had on the podcast not too long ago, who is fan-freaking-tastic. And that has helped to alleviate some of the busyness with work there. And then when I am with my family, I try really hard to just be with my family, which is actually kind of challenging as somebody who owns their own business, because part of owning your own business is kind of pretty much being like omnipresent online all the time. Like you have to kind of be active on all the social media all the time. And you guys have heard my thoughts on social media, but like, can you think of anything more exhausting than being available to every single person that shoots you a DM all the time? Like it's really, truly exhausting. But I do want to share the different fun things that I'm doing in my life. But every time I open an app, it's just like, oh, I'm just slapped in the face with 5 more people that need me to send them a link to something. And it's like, I would much rather just wait to look at that till Monday morning and then send everything I need to send all at once. But yeah, that is part of me just being as present as I can be for Giacomo or the kids or my mom or whomever I'm with. It is challenging though, because my brain feels like it's constantly operating on a lot of cylinders, processing a lot of different things at once, which I imagine is true for most people. But as a business owner, there's no days off. Like, even though I take the weekends off, there's no days off in the sense of, oh, you're sick? Why don't you just take the day off? Oh, it's a holiday for the kids. They don't have school. You don't just get to take the day off, like, because it's not like you come back and someone else did it for you. All the work is just waiting there for you, and you want to be there for your clients. Like, oftentimes holidays are when they need you the most. This is when they're struggling the most. So yeah, it's kind of a constant challenge, but it is one that I think I'm up for and getting a little tiny bit better at all the time.
Hard boundaries, if I can chime in here. Hard boundaries. Not to say that you can't cross them once in a grand while, but on the whole, the vast majority of the time, putting your foot down on those hard boundaries. Because when you create those kinds of hard lines where you're like, I am not going to work on the weekend no matter what. I'm not going to work past 8 p.m. no matter what. I'm going to spend the first 45 minutes of my morning, every morning, meditating, having a glass of water, and
Did you just say 45 minutes?
Well, a morning routine.
Not my morning, that's for sure.
I mean, I'm throwing out an arbitrary amount of time just to say, hey, this is my morning routine. These are the 2 or 3 things I do. Not look at my phone, drink a glass of water, meditate. That's because we're doing this challenge with our group, right? Point is, I can do these things no matter what. And I can create those hard boundaries, but if you cross those lines, you're going to be disappointed in yourself and you're probably going to move in the opposite direction. So creating hard boundaries, but also knowing like not getting married to them, because every once in a grand while, you do need to kind of reevaluate where you're drawing lines in the sand and when you need to create exceptions, or you'll wind up just like walking around angry, being like, meh, I don't want to work right now and I don't care what's going on. Or, hey, or the alternative where you don't create the hard boundaries and you just start letting all kinds of excuses settle in and you never check out. So it's like that in-between space. That's like, think where the magic happens, where you set those lines and you don't cross them the majority of the time, but every once in a while you're okay with it. And I think for me personally, that feels all right, and not being afraid to adjust because life changes. All right, everybody, thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of Vegan Proteins, Muscles by Brussels Radio. Please stay in touch with us on the socials at Muscles by Brussels, at Vegan Proteins on Facebook. We have a private group there, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, all the places. Shoot us an email by hitting the contact button at veganproteins.com, and I promise you'll get a personal response from one of us. Once again, my name is Giacomo.
And I'm Danny.
Talk to you soon.